Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Hari Sethi. A hard-earned 2-1 win against a resilient Wolves side at Anfield last Sunday saw the Reds extend their lead at the top of the table to 7 points, before the start of an intense period that sees them play Villa, City and Newcastle all within a few days of one another. This run-in could well play a pivotal role in the title race should Slot's side emerge relatively unscathed and with points on the board. On this episode, we'll be looking into the first of those difficult fixtures, a trip away to an injury-hit Aston Villa side under the lights on Wednesday evening. Joining me on the pod to give us his perspective on what's been an inconsistent season for Aston Villa so far, I'm delighted to welcome back co-host of the Villa podcast, Conan Doherty. Welcome on, Conan. Good to speak with you.
Thanks very much for having me. Great to be here.
No, thank you for soldiering on. We're speaking for those who don't know, which is most of these listeners. Before you joined, it was sort of speaking about sort of whether you were going to make it. Where I think you were having a bit of the flu that's going around this season at the moment. But here you are, bright and early. Thanks for joining us.
I'm no hero, Hari. I know you're trying to make me out to be one, but look, I just get on with it.
Yeah, no gloves for you whilst you're playing football, etc. Daily Mail column. I wanted to. I mean, there's quite a lot to talk about when it comes to Aston Villa. I think just given how much change there's been at the club over the past couple of seasons, and then the European adventure this season in the Champions League as well. There's many different aspects that we could come at it. But I suppose what I wanted to ask you is, now substantial way through the season so far, what have been your kind of overarching thoughts on how the season's gone? I guess maybe contrasted with your initial expectations before a ball was kicked.
Yeah, it's been a little disappointing. I mean, talking about expectation, I'll admit to you right now that I did put a bet on at the start of the year that Aston Villa could win the Premier League. So I think we're a long way off that. And a part of that was just because I watched the way they were playing last year and I understood the amount of injuries that they were working with. And it just felt like they were getting by teams so easily. They were scoring against teams so easily. The record against the top six was the best, or like against the Sky Six, as we call it. It was the best out of all those teams if you put them together. And I just thought, okay, we'll just add a bit more consistency. We're going to add some players, and we could be a dark runner for the league. But it's been so far away from that now. Even when I was putting that bet on, a lot of it was just I wanted to prove that I backed them at the start of the season. I didn't really think it was going to happen, but I didn't think they'd be this far off either. And I think it's the inconsistency has probably been the really disappointing thing. I mean, we do a podcast, and I've noticed recently it's fluctuating like game by game. The Villa players being heroes and us being smug to Villa players being losers, and we're never going to win a match again. And this is happening sort of throughout the whole season. And I think last year we weren't really good in the Conference League. Like all our performances weren't good, and our Premier League performances were. And it seems to have flipped a little bit, where we're good in the Champions League this season and not so good in the Premier League.
Yeah, it was interesting last season because I remember actually sort of seeing the way in which Villa found themselves in those Champions League spots. I think it's what you mentioned there in terms of sort of the attack and just how free flowing the goals were at times, as opposed to. No, you're used to looking at teams and going, oh yeah, that's a Champions League defense. I don't think the defense was all, well, everything Emre would have wanted it to have been last season. I think that, and that's probably why he went out and purchased some of the players that he did in terms of Amadou Onana. I mean, even Ian Maatsen coming in as a left back. There's a couple other defensive options in there as well. I think that probably would have been in his plans. But then what we've seen this season, as you've sort of mentioned, is yes, there's been injuries. There's been sort of fewer goals than you were accustomed to last season. And then this Unai Emery problem, I think that unfortunately has kind of followed him throughout his entire career in that just struggling to put together lots of wins away from home as well, which has always been kind of, I think, a difficult thing for Emery, despite, I think, how successful he was last season, actually, as you mentioned, against the Sky Six. I wanted to talk about the players that came in, because, I mean, it's fun when you say, you always want to back your team to be able to win the league, and however delusional I may sound, you may sound, whoever may sound, I'm including myself in that. at the start of the season, that's exactly where you want to be as a fan. And I remember, you know, thinking about when a side's recently qualified for Champions League football, often people will look at that and go, "Oh, well, they're going to find that tough." Like more games, like not being able to rotate as much as you perhaps would have liked to, or would have done in the Conference League or other European competitions because of the pressure of the Champions League. Uh, I, let's move on to transfers. I think I'm asking loads of these questions here, but Amadou Onana, Ian Matson, Cameron Archer, Jaden Philogene, Lewis Dobbin, Samuel Jr., right, Ross Barkley's coming as well. I'm probably leaving out some people here, but I wanted to ask you what you made of the summer business before we get on to talking about the January business and how those players of the ones that came in, who's made the biggest impact.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think they've probably been a little disappointed as well. Now, I know Villa were under constraints with PSR and they had to be smart, as smart as you can be when you're losing Douglas Luiz and Diaby. I mean, that is the really frustrating thing. You break a ceiling, you get into a Champions League, you're playing on a higher level and you're losing two of your most effective players, and Douglas Luiz was probably the best player last season. But Ian Matson probably just hasn't hit the heights that we've been expecting so far. I mean, this is a 37 million left back that we went out and got and sort of thought that he would be the main man, but look at Dean is still the first choice left back. Now Matson came on half time against Ipswich in the last game, and he was quite good. He was also pretty much at fault for the goal as well. So there's a bit of that with all these signings. Onana has started very good, and it was like, okay, this is a strong, big presence in the middle of the pitch, and he scored a couple of goals early on in his Villa career. And I sort of liked that they didn't try to replace Douglas Luiz. They got a sort of different profile of player because it was going to be very tough to try and just recreate Douglas Luiz. So I like the direction they went, and then they got Barkley, and it sort of fleshed out that midfield. Then where Yuri Tielemans, who didn't play centre midfield last season, he was playing on the left or off the striker. He is now playing centre midfield where Douglas Luiz was, and he's actually been their best player this season. But we had those options as well for, I think, for around November, December. There was a period where, okay, we've got a good squad here, but players just started dropping off then, getting injured. And I think the main summer business was keeping John Duran, because if we were going to lose him for 40 million, that would have been so hard to stomach, especially to a Premier League rival. And then obviously he's been so important for the first half of the year. Like the goals he scored, Villa wouldn't even be in the top half if it wasn't for John Duran. He scored so many winners. He gave us so many big moments. He got that win against Bayern Munich for us. And it's such a shame to see him go in the summer, because even though Villa haven't been good a lot of the time this season, it was very nice sort of looking at the bench and being like, well, hang on, we've got as good or if not better attacker to come on than any of these boys. And that was a very nice feeling, just knowing that, and the chaos he sort of brought to a match as well. Didn't feel like we had to be playing well for John Duran to score. But no, he's gone. So like that, I know you're saying about coming on to the January business then, but the main business in the summer was keeping him. And then that probably brings us on to January.
No, I think it does nicely, because I think it's so. I mean, before sort of the influence of the Saudi Pro League, I suppose it's so rare to see players that are that integral or that involved in a team's fortunes in a league moving in January. I know Liverpool fans have certainly gotten used to the sound bites of like, oh, it's tough. It's tough in January. You can't even despite the fact that I think some of Liverpool's best signings of the past decade have come in January. So it is possible, but you rarely see forwards, I'd say, sort of leave their club when they're so integral. And John Duran's role was interesting because, of course, I think seemed to be a case of Emery thinking about how does he manage the egos of Watkins and Duran and keep everybody happy. Can they work together? Can they not? Can they dovetail? How do we get the most out of them? And you're right, John Duran had that impact as a sort of like ultimate super sub for a good chunk of the season, and he came on into many different types of games and had an impact like that. Just before we go on to some of the other sort of business that was done in January, that obviously comes from his departure, and I think Jaden Philogene moves on because he wasn't playing much, and also I guess that moved to Ipswich, but. I'm interested because all I saw was all of a sudden John Duran's been sold. So I wanted to understand Like you mentioned, of course, he was potentially going to be sold in the summer, but he then has his impact. Why has he ended up out the door?
Because Villa need you can tell by my hesitation. I'm not too sure myself, but Villa need money. They,
Mm-hmm.
I think, accepted that John Duran was going to leave at some stage, even though he signed a long-term contract in the summer. It was he was going to leave this year or next year. He was going to leave. I know he was a bit of a problem around the training ground. He had an ego, obviously. I mean, it was only like the second last game last year that Villa drew with Liverpool, and John Duran scored 2 goals. And in the post match interview, his captain John McGinn, who's been asked about John Duran scoring 2 goals, the first thing he says is, "Yeah, he's a bit of a nightmare at times." And like that's not him talking about what he's like for opposition defenders. That's him talking about what he's like around the training ground. And he also said another time when John Duran scored was that now our job is going to be trying to keep his feet on the ground. So I think he did, I wouldn't even say good ideas above his station because I think his ideas were very level with his station, to be honest. And like that's the really golden thing about losing someone like John Duran. It wasn't even the amount of goals he was scoring; it was the type of goals. Like he's scoring so many different types of goals all the time. Like there is a reality here where this guy could become the best striker of all time. But like I don't think he was going to see that out at Villa because if you look at his record as well, he doesn't have one assist for Aston Villa. Now, I think his play, his general play was improving. He was definitely holding the ball up well. He was getting involved. He was coming deep when he had to. His pressing was actually quite good, maybe a bit unpredictable, but he was up for it anyway. But in terms of having Ollie Watkins and the consistency he brings with everything in terms of the general play, the scoring as well, the assists, the work rate, and I think it's clear that Ollie Watkins likes being the main man. I mean, Ollie Watkins struggled with with Danny Ings breathing down his neck. He didn't like the idea that Danny Ings could come in and replace him from game to game. And when Danny Ings left, Watkins just he went into new territory. And it's just funny that as soon as Duran leaves, Watkins actually gets injured for what must be the first time in his Aston Villa career. But he only missed a couple of games. He's very durable, and he comes back and he scores against Ipswich. So I think it was really going to be a choice between the two of them. I think they understood if we want to do any business, and obviously they were very hot for Asensio. They've been mad for João Felix for a long time. I think they understood if we want to actually flesh out this squad, we need to get rid of a striker, and one of those two had to go.
Alright, the Reds, it's Jack here, and that was a clip from one of Anfield Index's audio podcasts. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure you do like, share and subscribe to keep up to date on all things LFC. We record around 100 audio podcasts every month with our shows featuring match-going fans, top journalists, professional analysts and even Liverpool legends along the way. With the great Dane himself, Jan Molby, joining us every single week. If you want to listen to all our podcasts for free, head over to anfieldindex.com/podcasts. Our audio shows are available wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Anfield Index. Or if you prefer to listen to all our podcasts in full and without any ads, why not head over to AI Pro today to check it out now at AnfieldIndexPro.com. If you want to get involved in the great growing community of Liverpool fans, check out the Anfield Index Discord. The link is in the description. Do get involved with that from Reds around every corner of the globe. For now, Reds, hope you enjoyed this video.